Ekam praksharam Rudi nirantaram Bhasate swayam Likyate patham Hridaya kuhara madhye Kevalam Brahmamadram Yaham aham Niti Sakshat Atmarubena Bhava Hrudi Vishamanasa Svam Chinvata Majjata Pavana Shalanaru Atmanishto A few weeks back, when Mani Madam had called regarding this satsang, I had requested that I be allowed to speak on some verses from Ullad Narpade, a work of Bhagavan Sri Ramana. The verses 8 to 22, which threw a light on, to my knowledge, what we traditionally keep as the object of worship, Ishvara. These verses, according to my understanding, directly talk about the object of worship that we call by different names, the Ishvara, and I requested Madam whether I could speak on that. And she, in her inimitable style, she said, why don't we call it devotion and self-inquiry? Most appropriately so. It's a very intriguing subject, something that borders on something that we can grasp and something that is so obviously beyond our grasp. And how does the Rishi express it so that we intuitively pick it up and carry it out in practice in that dimension where alone we can find the truth of it. The Rishi understands that expression can't be the truth, but can be a good pointer. And of course, the Maharishi is a support across many dimensions, not only in the printed. And it is in this area where we worship the Supreme and we try to merge into the Supreme through self-inquiry, that we are trying to explore, so to say. We could as well begin with a quote from Bhagavan in this area, which is very interesting. In talk number 363, if you want me to slow down, you can always put up the hand. Bhagavan says about the paths that are available to us to find the truth or to find God or to be self-realized, Bhagavan says one of the two things must be done. One of the two things must be done. Either surrender because you admit your inability and also require a higher power to help you, or investigate into the cause of misery, go into the source and merge into the self. The cause of misery obviously being the ego. Either way, you will be free from misery. And the intrigue comes in here. The last sentence, Bhagavan says, God never forsakes one who has surrendered. I'll read that again. One of the two things must be done, either surrender unreservedly because you admit your inability and also require a higher power to help you, or investigate into the cause of misery, go into the source and merge into the self. Either way, you will be free from misery, either by surrender, the devotion, or by Atma Vichara, you will surely be free from misery. Then comes the intrigue. God never forsakes one who has surrendered. So Bhagavan talks of surrender unreservedly or inquire into the source of misery, who am I, and dismantle the ego so that the self shines forth. But he covers both these statements in an umbrella statement which says, either way you will come out of misery, and God never forsakes one who has surrendered. So the implication is quite apparent that the jnani is saying that God's reality is the self, or self itself is to be treated as God. Self itself is to be treated as the God whom we have worshipped all along. We will find that in most of the Ashtotrams, at least in the ones that I have come across, which I cannot claim to be many, but in each of those Ashtotrams, there is one reference to Om Parabrahmane Namaha. So, the Supreme Self itself is treated as God. In that perspective, that even the Jnana Vichara is a state of devoteeship where the presence of the Supreme Being as the Self, as God, is allowing us to follow the path of deliberate letting go of our own vasanas, and the Supreme releasing us from the overall other conditionings that may be present in nature or in other dimensions, and revealing its true nature when the ego is dismantled. So it is in that perspective that we are going to look at these verses, not in a sense that Jnana Vichara is something that is done by the ego, and the ego by its strength finds the solution to the misery. No, it's not in that sense that we are going to look at these verses. We are going to look at these verses in Ulladhanarpadu in the sense that the self itself is the God we have been looking for. And that is the perspective with which we are entering into these verses 8 to 22. That's about 15 verses. We are not going to go into all of them. If I can make some pointers as to what Bhagavan is revealing along the journey in self-inquiry, which is itself a devoteeship to the self. Self-inquiry is a devoteeship to self. Nothing that the ego can arrogate that it has become special. It is still a devotee and a devotee of God. God in God's reality as the self. Verse number 8, Bhagavan begins in Ulladu Narpade that the worship of the Supreme Self in any name or form is but a way to come to the Supreme Self. So Bhagavan allows for all the Nama Rupa worships there, and that he doesn't deny that power. For instance, when there is a interaction with a professor of, I think must be English, from Allahabad University, one Professor Syed, in the talks once again, we find Professor Syed asking Bhagavan, you are an Advaiti, and how is it that you have sung songs of devotion, songs of stuti on Arunachala, the hill here in Tiruvannamalai? And Bhagavan says the hill, the poet, the poem are all nothing but the self. But the professor is a good professor of logic too, it appears. He says that when there are so many hills, how do you select this particular hill to give so much praise? And Bhagavan relents a bit and says, how is it that all of you and you from so far, you have all assembled here underneath the foot of this hill? And the professor is not one to relent. He says, we have all assembled here for you, O Ramana. And Bhagavan carries home the power of the path of devotion by saying, what is it that attracted that boy of 16 years who had crossed all likes and dislikes, all fear and attachment, and merged in the self with absolutely no desires? Who is it that could attract and pull such a one, such a consciousness that is absolutely innocent to its presence, except Arunachala? Therefore, the power of the hill cannot be denied, is the phrase he uses. That the power we have relied on as little jivas, finding our way through devotion, that power is not denied. Only its own truth is to be unrelentingly pursued. So what is it to see God in actuality? Bhagavan says that worship in any name and form, including the name of Arunachala, which has obvious such powers in that dimension, is but a way to come to the supreme truth. And in the supreme truth, to inquire into one's own truth and merge into the supreme self is real act of worship or real darshan of God, says Bhagavan. That is the worship of Nama and Rupa mature, so to say, into self-inquiry, where the reality of God, the reality of the Jiva, and the reality of the world all merge in the Supreme Self as I. That is verse number 8. Now, let us pause a bit here to look at what all we have worshipped as Ishvara's powers. We have worshipped as Ishvara's powers the act of creation, the act of maintaining the creation, the act of dissolving the creation and keeping that cycle going, veiling the absolute true self so that the creation appears to be real. And finally, the fifth task, granting liberation to those who seek liberation. So there seem to be 5 tasks of Ishvara traditionally: creation, maintenance, destruction, and veiling and mukti. Now, Bhagavan calls the Ishvara as Kattu Oli, Irundu Olir, existence consciousness, or the light that reveals. It is in the same perspective that Adi Shankara in the Dakshinamurti Stotram, the first 3 verses of Dakshinamurti Stotram are on the world, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari, and all that. The next 3 verses on the Jiva, and the 7th, 8th, 9th verses are on the light that reveals. The light that reveals, or Ishvara. Now, in the 7th verse in Dakshinamurti Stotram, there is this revelation that Balyadisha, that, and in the Swapna Jagrat Sushupti, in these avasthas, the brush strokes in that verse are vast. If one can work at that plane which Adi Shankara wants us, then we can understand what he means by the light that reveals. He says that though appearing to be mixed up in these avasthas of the childhood, youth, middle age, old age, as well as the revolving avasthas of waking, dream, deep sleep, and the avasthas of dyads like sukha, dukkha, cause, effect. We should understand that here no individuality is given prominence. It is the avasthas that are given prominence. And that verse says, though appearing to be mixed up in these avasthas, the self-luminous light which reveals these avasthas is untouched by these avasthas. The self-luminous light, and Bhagavan calls that self-luminous light as I, the Akanda Spurana of Atma. So the Akanda Spurana of Atma, we take it as the power in whose Sannidhi the creation, maintenance, and destruction take place. So Bhagavan says, Ishvara, the light that reveals, doesn't have any sankalpa and is not touched by karma, good or bad. In his Sannidhi, in the Sannidhi of that light, the whole, just like as in the Sannidhi of Surya, all activities on earth take place. In the Sannidhi of this Purana, all the creation, maintenance, and destruction activities take place. So what is this veiling and what is this revealing? We are now not going to discuss about creation, maintenance, destruction, because they take place in the Sannidhi of the I, the Akanda Akara Atma Vritti. Let us take it like that. Now, therefore, the Akanda Akara Atma Vritti of I, Atma Vritti of I, has both the power of veiling and the power of liberation. And to a question in Vichara Sangraham, to a question in Upadesha Manjari, one of the later works of Bhagavan, a dialogue between Swami Natanananda and Bhagavan in the form of question and answers somewhere in the early 30s, 1930s. In that, Bhagavan says that when Sadhu Natanananda asks if everything is fixed by Ishvara, if all these are commanded by that power of Sannidhi, let us take, then how can I sit for self-enquiry? Will not my prarabdha come in the way of my sitting for self-enquiry? If everything is determined by God and everything is happening in that Sannidhi, then how can I practice self-enquiry? Will it not be circumscribed or will it not be limited by my prarabdha? Bhagavan says, very interestingly, prarabdha is applicable only to the outward turned mind. To the inward turned mind, prarabdha is not applicable. Prarabdha does not affect the inward turned mind. See the implication, the power of veiling, the power of giving liberation. Both are present in the Akhanda Akara Atma Bhakti because it is a power, it is shining. It can push outside, it can drag inside. Whom does it push outside and give support to go outside? Whom does it pull inside and allows merger into the self? Quite obviously, the ones who are turned outside and are still having sankalpas in the sensory and in the mental worlds and probably in other dimensions, then the outward power of this Purana, it pushes them into the Sannidhi. In that Sannidhi, they start getting the phala for their doings. So the Purana has this dual aspect. See, the three aspects of creation, maintenance, and destruction of Ishvara, we are, as per Bhagavan's teachings, we are taking them to take place in the Sannidhi of this Purana, whereas this veiling and the mukti giving, they are the powers of this Purana itself. And what is it that makes us get caught in the veiling power? And what is it that allows us to embrace and go in with the power of release? Bhagavan gives Upadesham in Upadesha Manjari through Sadhu Natanananda that only to the outward turned mind, the prarabdha or veiling power, it applies. To the one who is seeking to know the self or is inward turned, the prarabdha does not apply, he says. So, this Purana, in its Sannidhi, covers the three powers of creation, maintenance, and destruction in one view, and it holds the two powers of veiling and giving mukti. And the Guru gives us the clue that if you are outward turned, you are pushed by the veiling power of that Spurana into the Sannidhi, where you go into the play of the good and the bad. So be turned inward. So be turned inward towards that light. As Adi Shankara says, that light which is self-luminous is unchanged in all the avasthas. The avasthas are changing continuously, whereas the self-luminous light of the self remains unchanged. And Bhagavan says, hold that. Bhagavan says, seek for your own truth. Who am I? In that light of that Spurana, which has the power to liberate you, which has the power to drag you towards the self. So it is in this context that we are going to view the further verses. the further verses, verse number 9, is on how the dyads and triads, the dyads of good, bad, cause, effect, inside, outside, all these are dyads in the sense that one cannot exist without the presence of the other. If there is good, automatically there is bad. In the relative area, that is called dyad. If there is dharma towards someone, there is adharma already there. That is why comparatively we could say this is dharma. Now, Bhagavan says, all these dyads and triads rise holding on to one. Holding on to one. This one, going back to Dakshinamurti Stotram, I said in verse number 7, Adi Shankara refers to the self-luminous Atma, self-luminous light. But in verse 8, 9, he brings in the Purusha. He brings in the Maya Shakti and individual Ishvara. But we need not go into those nitty-gritties. We can remain with the light. My suggestion is that we remain with the light that reveals the avasthas, the individualities, the play of good and bad without itself being affected. That self-luminous light, this Purana I, is what we are talking about as the Ishvara as far as our enquiry now is concerned. And it is already present. It is not that our enquiry is going to make that self-luminous light. It is only, our enquiry is only going to remove the ignorance where the self-luminous light starts revealing itself. As Shankara says in Raghu Krasta, in the eclipse, have the Surya and Chandra really vanished? No. Similarly, the Atma Swarupa never goes anywhere, even though we were unaware of it. And when that unawareness, the ignorance is eliminated, the self shines in self-luminous nature. Is the whole crux of the teachings. Now, let us explore the further verses that the Ishvara we were worshipping, and we have found that worship has total validity. All the worship we have done has total validity, and that is the legitimate marga which has brought us to the Atma Swarupa, the reality of God as Paramatma. To share with you one of the experiences in our self-inquiry sessions and how the worship brings one to the Paramatma. This happened about 10 years ago in one of the self-inquiry sessions that we used to have in Sanjay Nagar. We used to have on Friday evenings. An old lady of about 70, 75 years of age, she had come to her son's house in Sanjay Nagar, and she had been asking her son, is there any meditation center around here? I want to go and be in that meditative atmosphere. She has come from some other town apparently. And the son had brought her to the self-inquiry session, and she happily participated. The methodology would be, we would read a little bit from Ramana's teachings, either talks or some other work, which would make it clear what is it to do self-inquiry. And then we would sit for self-inquiry for about half an hour, and then there would be some discussions, or we may read the book itself, when sending the book across. And she participated in that for 4 or 5 weeks. She was coming 4 or 5 weeks. After 4 or 5 weeks, she accosted me as I was to make my way to my home after the session. Around 8 o'clock, she stopped me and said, see, I used to practice the japa of Ramanama, which gradually became dhyana. And the dhyana, over the many years, became of such nature that I don't need to make any effort. I don't need to make any effort to do the dhyana. The dhyana is going on akanda. I had said akanda akara atma vritti for the self. And here it is Akhanda Akara Rama Vritti. The Akhanda Akara Vritti is felt as Rama, 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 and there is no effort maker. The effort maker is gone. She is not able to make any effort. She is not able to make. There is no necessity to make. Everything is Rama for her. That is when she has come to self-inquiry. And that particular week, after 4 or 5 weeks of coming, she accosted me and asked, see, I used to have this Rama so effortlessly, and he started coming to self-inquiry, and it was so natural. Come to silence of self-attention. I could easily follow what you were saying, and I am practically in the silence of the self-attention. But then some doubt crops up. At some time, I get a doubt whether I am leaving my Rama, whether I have left my Rama, who has practically taken care of everything for me and has become everything. Now there is nothing but Rama for me. Such a one who has covered all the objective space for me and has completely consumed me, as I can make no effort to hold him. Am I living such a one? The acme of all my devotion. And somehow the exchange with her was that, see Ma, how did you come to Atma Vichara? If Rama alone is there all around you, who else could have brought you to Atma Vichara? Who else could have made you do Atma Vichara, made you do the self-inquiry, except Rama? When you have so absolutely absorbed yourself in that Akhanda Akara Rama Vritti, then which other power could have made you ask, hey, inquire, who am I? Who is the one holding Ramanama? Obviously, it must be Rama. Therefore, whenever you are in the silence of Atma, which you have been asked by Rama to pursue, you be in the silence. Whenever you get doubt, get back to the Akhandakara Rama Vritti. When he wants, let him make you completely absorbed in the self. Why should you remain with the doubt? Whenever you get doubt, be with Rama. When you feel you have left Rama, let him at the appropriate time, who has taken away all doership from you so that you can hold on to him without any effort, let him complete this job. That was the discussion that we could have with that wonderful lady who showed that the path of devotion automatically brings us to Atma. What else can be the Akhandakara Rama Vritti? When that alone is there as the consciousness feeling itself, what else can it be but the self? Can it be the non-self? Absolutely all non-self, non-existence has been eliminated. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. The sat has so occupied self-luminously that the asat has gone out of existence. Now, what else can the Akhandakara Rama Vritti be than the self? So naturally one comes to the self there. It is that self-luminous light that Bhagavan says all the dyads and triads hold on to. He says all the dyads, good, bad, cause, effect, right, wrong, inside, outside, they arise holding on to this light. You can take it that he is referring to the self-luminous light, the power of self-luminous light, or the Sannidhi, or if you still want, as the Ishvara, as the individual there. Whichever way you want, you can understand. But holding on to one, all these arise. If you inquire what is that one, if you inquire what is that I, which is self-luminously present inside me, then all the dyads and triads drop away. In witnessing, what do? We consciously attend to the dyads and triads without judgment. And the thoughts, dyads, triads, they all drop away. Here, holding on to the one, there is no witnessing without right or wrong. Here it is holding on to the one. How to hold on to that one? Whenever I ask any one of you, do you exist? What is the answer point? The answer is always going to be yes, I do exist. And secondly, if I ask a question, do you need any other support, including the greatest divinity, to come and help you with this knowledge, to come and validate this, to come and say that, yeah, I support you, that's why you are able to know? No, you have direct knowledge that you exist. Only now it is cluttered that I exist as this body, but there is that fragrance which is different from other knowledge, that I know directly without any validation, without any support, that I exist. And Bhagavan says, hold that. Whenever you have a dyad arising, good and bad arising, ask for whom is it arising? It is arising for me. Who am I? Put attention on that, for which you don't need any other validation. No other thing needs to come and support your existence, of which you are self-aware. So hold that, and you keep holding that. The dyads and triads, the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, the cause and the effect, inside, outside, all that fall away. The knower knowing known, seer seeing seen, all fall away. What is left untouched beyond even the avasthas of waking, dream and deep sleep, beyond the avasthas of the childhood, middle age, youth, old age, the self-luminous light to which you are holding on, that alone remains. The dyads and triads fall away. You are asked to hold the Ishvara Shakti. You are asked to hold the light that reveals everything. Not, see, now the light is revealing everything, but we are so interested in the objects that we leave the light that reveals. And Bhagavan says, hold on to that light that reveals, which is self-aware of itself. And whenever something other appears, you hold on to that light till all the dyads and triads fall away. So how the Ishvara Shakti is directly made to be held. How Bhagavan literally takes us by the hand and makes us hold on to the Ishvara as the light that reveals everything. Here, the enquiry does not end there. To Gambiram Seshaya, in the first prose work, Bhagavan says, when you do this enquiry, who am I? There will appear this Spurana. There will appear this Spurana, which we have seen has both the veiling power and the mukti giving power, the liberating power. Both are present in this Spurana. This Spurana is I. It can push outside those who are still interested in outside things. It can pull inside the ones who want to go inward. Now, to Gambiram Seshayar, Bhagavan says in the work Self-Enquiry, it is called Vichara Sangram. When you inquire who am I, then this Purana will appear. Now it may not appear immediately, but when the ego becomes tenuous, the ego is weakened sufficiently, then the Akanda Akara Atma Vritti becomes available for feeling. When the ego becomes, that is called Tanumanasi Avastha. When you have sufficiently burned the holding together of the identities and the holding together of the sensory body by the ego, when sufficient breakdown is there, then one starts feeling the Akanda Akara Atma Vritti, this Purana. Bhagavan says to Gambiram Seshaya, hold that and keep quiet. Don't ask anything from this Purana. Don't ask anything from the I. Be still. If you remain quiet, if you remain still, then this Purana will burn your I am the body idea completely, and like the fire that is lit in a camphor will quieten down and be silent. It won't even be this Purana anymore. Where is the need to shine? Where is the need for power when there is the Atma alone? When you hold it and keep quiet, it will reveal its reality has not even this Purana, but of complete silence. The self is even beyond this Purana, he says. To a question by Devaraja Mudaliar in Day by Day with Ramana, Devaraja Mudaliar asks, is this Purana the nature of the self or the nature of the ego? Is this Purana, the I, is it of the nature of the self? Many times Bhagavan would refer to Purana itself as the self. Better to hold it than go in the way of seer seeing seen. But then, what is really the self? And what is really this Purana? The question, once again, by Devaraj Mudaliar is that whether this Purana is itself the self or is it of the nature of the ego? Bhagavan clarifies, it is neither the absolute self nor the singularized ego, the first person. It is something in between the two. The self is even beyond this Purana. Those are the words he uses. The self is a silence where even this Purana is not there. Where is the need to shine when you alone are there? So with that being held, let us go into the further verses. So as Purana, we are to hold on to the Ishvara and get rid of these associations with the conditionings, the limitations, that which bind us. The Ishvara Shakti itself removes the I am the body idea, Bhagavan says. But then, the moment if you ask something from this Purana, you are going to be once again pushed away as the Jiva. Bhagavan says, hold on to this Purana and keep quiet, be still. And this Purana will burn away the I am the body idea completely. And in the end, like fire lit in camphor, will itself quieten down into the self. This is Mukti, says Bhagavan. So now, having seen the whole gamut of that area, let's come back to these verses on Ishvara and the Atma. These verses 8 to 22 are on the Ishvara and the Atma on our journey in self-enquiry. So the beauty in self-enquiry is it reveals the beauty of the path of devotion. It reveals that there is that Ishvara there in your journey. There is that first person who is the first person of all the persons. But then that is also not real. When enquiry is continued, that first person, the personality, is also subsumed or consumed by the self-luminous light. And that self-luminous light also becomes quiet without even the nature of Spurana when held on and not asked of. So now, the verse 8, verse 9 we have seen. Verse 8 was, what is the proper form of worship? The proper form of worship, it may begin with name and form. It definitely is a path, but then it has to mature into inquiring into one's own truth in the truth of the self. Finding the truth of the self is the same as one's own truth. Merge into that. That is the real worship of God according to verse 8. Verse 9 says that all the dyads and triads arise holding on to one. We have taken that one to be Spurana. So if you ask for whom has this dyad or triad arisen, you will inevitably have to find the Spurana. And what does Gambhira Mayar say? The teaching come. You hold on to this Spurana, keep quiet. Now the next 4 verses, that is 10, 11, 12, 13, are on the dyad of knowledge and ignorance. And it is really in-depth analysis of the dyad of knowledge and ignorance. I am not going to go into those verses. You can, those who are interested can go into them. The ultimate inquiry into that dyad, which is the principal dyad in the Jnana Marga. That is, in the Jnana Marga, what is the dyad? The dyad is knowledge versus ignorance. That has been discussed thoroughly by Bhagavan in those 4 verses. The same as verse number 9. What is the principle? The dyad of knowledge and ignorance arises holding on to what? Ask for whom? Suppose there is an argument with somebody and you come home and you have this doubt. Did I tell it correctly? Did I have correct knowledge of it? Or was I ignorant of it? Was that person correct? And should I have yielded to him? All these doubts when they come, that means the doubt is between the area of knowledge and ignorance. Bhagavan says, transcend that plane. Don't try to find solutions in the plane of diet. Transcend that plane by asking, for whom is this doubt about whether what I have is proper knowledge or not? To me, who am I? Takes you beyond the fielding of that, drops. The whole area of argument completely drops, and one is attentive to the self-luminous self. Hold on to that. That is the sadhana. That is the set of 4 verses. Much more than what I have said is there. Hold on to Ishvara and drop the knowledge ignorance dyad. Go to that knowledge which is not the duality with knowledge and ignorance. Bhagavan says in Atma Vidya Sankirtanam that Tannai Aridalindri Pinnai Edarigilan Tannai Arindidil Pin Ennai Uladariya. A beautiful statement that Tannai Aridalindri Pinnai Edarigilan. Other than knowing the Atma, the self, what is the purpose or use of knowing anything else? Because you will be shifted from that knowledge to something else. Tannai Arindidil, the moment one has known the self and merged into that knowledge of self-luminous self, Tannai Arindidil Pin Ennai Uladariya. What other is left? In that self-luminous self, there is no other. So it has transcended the knowledge-ignorance duality by being the self-luminous light. Those are the 4 verses in knowledge-ignorance. But then we go on to more interesting verses which help us pursue the path of self-help. That was the idea, that the 14th verse is about the first person, second person, third person. Bhagavan says, only after the first person arises, the second and third person arise. If the truth of the first person is inquired into and the first person is dismantled, all second person and third persons vanish and the self-luminous light alone shines. See how Bhagavan takes us from the individual jivas, the billions and billions of jivas, to the first person and dismantles that first person, takes us to the self-luminous light. This, if we can meditate, the self-inquiry and its culmination will be available to us clearly as we progress, as we make self-inquiry. It's not really progress. There is nothing like progressing towards the self. But then, how else can we speak? In these words of progress and regress we use and try to point to that where these are transcended. The verse again, the verse number 14, very interesting, says that if I see 20 people whom I am addressing now, Bhagavan says the first person and the second person, the third person. There are 7 billion people other than this, unknown number of devas and other things, let us say. However many persons may be there. All I have to do is, who is it that feels there are 20 persons? Who is it that feels that there are other entities, 7 billion or 7 trillion, doesn't matter. For whom is this thought? To me. Who am I? I directly go to the first person. You should have the strength of inquiry. What you are doing, you should be able to understand dhyanically from the verse. Bhagavan says, if that first person is not there, is inquired into and removed in that light, then all this story about second persons and all the other persons put together, the entire universe, gets absorbed into the self-luminous light. So, the Jiva, the Ishvara, the Jagat, all the 3 shine together as the self-luminous light. To put it, the Ishvara consumes the Jiva and the Jagat. But then don't ask anything of that Ishvara who can stand alone, says Bhagavan. Keep quiet. Then that Ishvara will quieten down into self. The Ishvara Shakti has the ability to stand alone. But if you ask anything of it, you will be Jiva and there will be a huge Jagat in front of you. So, hold the first person, pay attention to The reality of the first person vanishes in the self-luminous light. The self-luminous light has consumed the Jiva and the Jagat. And the self-luminous light will be a power only if you ask something of it. If you hold on to it and keep quiet, from the Shakti, it becomes Shivam. It becomes absolute Shantam. That's why Bhagavan says, when the self is inverted, that is Shanti, that is Shivam. When it is outward turned in its power as I, the I itself is considered as outward turning by Bhagavan. The I, when it is outward turned as I, it becomes Shakti, he says. So don't ask anything of that Shakti. Keep quiet. Then the Shakti will take you to the reality, the Shivam or the self. So that is verse 14. A very interesting contribution to us sadhakas on the way, that what are we doing? We are not to analyze whether what is that person thinking of me. How will I become a better person than that person? Absolutely not. All these are completely washed out in the light of the self. Even to think that there is another who is to help me or I have to help him, that is gone. We'll have to immediately ask, for whom is this thought of another? For whom is this thought that I am sharing Bhagavan's teachings with 20 people? For whom is this thought that there are so many trillions or billions of entities other than me, each entity occupying a body? So all these solid liquids are all occupied by the consciousness. Now, who imagines, who thinks that there are so many entities? Me. Who am I? Put that into the, to know that there are 7 billion entities, there is a consciousness that should be apart. But to know myself, I don't need a consciousness apart. To see this light, I have to be that light. So be the light of Atma Jyoti and drop all other personalities. Then the first person also drops away and the self-luminous self alone is, says Bhagavan. Now that is verse number 14. Verse number 15 and 16 make us inquire about time and space. I will take up 16 itself. Verse 15 is on past, present, future. Bhagavan says, the past and future are also called as present when they happen. So therefore, there is only present for the consciousness. For us, there is only the present where we can act. In the present, inquire into your own truth. Then the present also drops away and self alone shines. That is verse number 15. Verse number 16 is that Namandri Naleda Nade. Very beautiful presentation that both time and space, the huge concepts of billions of light years of space. It is said that gravitational waves that emerge from the collision of two black holes 1.2 billion years ago, when Earth had only unicellular organisms, that crossed Earth in 2015. That means the time and space appear so huge, billions of years, when human beings, according to our understanding, have not appeared at all. But then in Atmavachara, Bhagavan says, Namandri Naled Nade. All that collapses in self-attention. Without self-attending light, can there be time? Can there be space? Namandri Naled Nade. Nadumkal Namudambel Nal Natul Nampadu. He says that when we are seeking the self, if we identify with the body, then I am not present up to this, present from here to here, absent again. Born in 1962, by average life of Indian, let's say 30 years back, I must not be present here. The body should not be present here. 30 years back, Indians' average life was 56, 57 years. Presently, it may be more, it may be 70. But average is such a misleading concept. Will any one of us get into a river? If somebody says the average depth of the river is 3 feet and we don't know swimming, will we attempt to cross the river with that data? No. It could be just 2 inches for such a long period, and there could be a trench which is 30 feet long, 30 feet deep, for 10 feet long, which I may not be able to cross. So average is such a misleading concept. Based on that, we may decide that I may live for another 5-10 years in the body. But then, Nam Udambel, only when we identify with the body, we are trapped in time and space. Nam Udambo, are we this body? No, we are that self-luminous light. Now, Indru, Andru, Endru, today, yesterday, tomorrow, all the time we are the same. The Avasthatare are all the same. Whether in Bangalore, whether in the US, whether in Tiruvannamalai, I am the same. So hold on to the self-luminous light. Time and space, both are transcended. Hold the Ishvara, the self-luminous light, without whom the time and space cannot appear. Then you cross time and space. Namundu Nal Nadil. Bhagavan says, the self-luminous light alone exists, and that is you. And there is no time and space. That is verse number 16. 17, 18, Bhagavan helps us to cross the body and the word. Both the Jnani and the Ajnani say that I am the body. But what does the Ajnani mean when he says I am the body? When he says I am the body, he limits the I, the self-luminous light, to the contours of the body. But when the Jnani says I am the body, for him, the body is nothing but the self-luminous light. The body is not this. What is his Swarupa? So what was considered as body is now the I. The next verse, the same I, which has consumed the body, consumes the whole world. To the Ajnani, the truth is limited to the extent of the world. To the Jnani, the truth shines as the self-luminous eye, as the Ishvara, who has consumed the world and the Jivas. The Ishvara alone shines. The condition that Jnani puts is don't ask anything of that Ishvara. Okay. Now, the verse number 19 is about fate and free will. Obviously, both go away. The contest between fate and free will is only till we realize the self-luminous self. The moment the self-luminous self, the individualities are gone and the self-luminous self is abided in, where is the contest between fate and free will? Who can think of, oh, these things are in my control, those things are not in my control. Fate has allowed me those benefits, and these privileges I have by myself. Such contests are not available to the self-luminous light. Only when the mind is there, only when these different situations, the triads are there, one can feel certain circumstances are under my control. Most of the circumstances are under the control of fate. When am I going to win fate? The fate and free will absolutely lose their existence and are consumed in the light of the self, the I. There is no thought of the fate. There is no thought of how to overcome fate by free will. So both lose. Will we get into arguments about these? Asks Bhagavan. And then comes the verses about darshan. And quickly, I'll try to complete that so that we can have discussion for 10 minutes. 3 verses. 19, 20, 21, 22. Bhagavan covers what is it to have darshan of God. I'll take one of those verses so that you get a feel of it. Bhagavan says, Kanam Tanai Vittu, leaving out the consciousness which is seeing. Leaving out you are the seer, you are the conscious entity. Leaving you out to say that I am seeing God is only a mental operation. He says, Kanam Tanai Vittu Tan Kadavulai Kanal, Kanam Manomayam Kachi. It is only a Manomaya Kachi. It is only a scene that is displayed to you by the illusory mind. Kanam Tanai Vittu Tan Kadavulai Kanal, Kanam Manomayam Kachi. Tanai Kanamavan Tan Kadavul Kandana, Tan Mudalai Tan Mudal Poi, Tan Kadavul Andri Ilada. Only the one who inquires into the first person, who inquires into who am I, goes up to the first person, dismantles the first person, and remains as the self, that being the self is alone having true darshan of God. One can have the direct understanding that now I am having darshan of God. There is a devotee of Bhagavan called Muruganar Swami. He writes, in the self, I am in the embrace of God, and remaining in the embrace of God, what a fraction of the teachings that my life together with God has revealed, I am revealing to you in the form of these verses. The whole work of Guru Achakakova, he says, I am remaining in the embrace of God. That means once the jiva loses its jiva nature and is in that light of the self, then that I am having darshan of God is a direct experience, is aparoksha anubhuti. The aparoksha anubhuti of jnana is nothing but direct darshan of God. And Tannaitan Karnam, Talaivan Tanai Karnam, Ennum Pannulum Yennayanai. What is it to see oneself or to see God? Tannaitan Karna level. Now, who is to see oneself? If there is you alone are there, how can you see? You can be yourself. The very act of seeing, the very act of knowing, they get absorbed in being the self. If you cannot see yourself, how can you see God? When the act of seeing cannot enter the area of seeing yourself, then the act of knowing has to be dropped to know yourself. How can you know God or see God? Poonadal Khan. To make all this, to make the ahankara and mamakara as food of the self, as the food of the Atma Jyoti, is to have darshan of the Atma Jyoti. So when you make the ahankara and mamakara as food of God, you have offered both to food of God. Then you are one with Him. Sadhuvam Swamigal says, Kadavulahi Nindrudal Kadri Sipogala. He says that by abiding as that self-luminous light, you can cast off this body like one who has cast off his soiled dress. Let's say that. But then we can add on to Sadhuvam and say, Kadavulagi Nindrudal Kadatrivisi Irkala. That is, one can abide in that self-luminous light, detach oneself completely from the gross, subtle and causal bodies, and be here and now. Sadhuvam Swamigal beautifully helps us by saying, Kadatrivisi, you can throw the body like, when that opportunity comes, throw the body like a dress that is to be put into the washing machine and go away freely. We can add on to it a little bit with the permission given by the self-luminous light, that you can detach yourself completely, easily, so lightly in that self-luminous self and be wherever you are. And one need not go anywhere. Where can I go? Asks Bhagavan. Where can anyone go when one is the self-luminous light, which is beyond time, which is beyond space, which is beyond fate, which is beyond free will, which is beyond dualities, triads, which is beyond first person, second person, third person. Where can you go? You are the self. You are the Lord reality. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namaste, sir. My name is Venkatesh Varlu. Sir, my basic question is, in devotion, that means I am treating myself as a separate entity for the higher self, as against the self-inquiry. So, is something which both go together, or is devotion is going from self to self, or is there a separate entity which are talking each other? That is a basic confusion, sir.
From Bhagwan's initial quote was that whether we follow the path of devotion or the path of self-inquiry, if we are making some sadhana, if we are making self-inquiry or surrender, then we are considering ourselves separate. from Supreme. It's not that the one following self-inquiry is directly one with the Supreme. No. That if you are following a path, if I am making effort, that means the consciousness, see, the intellect may say anything, but the consciousness is having the bhavana of being apart from God. So both are on same footing. The devotee and the self-inquiry person are on the same footing. And what happens, the beauty of both the paths is that both go hand in hand. See, when we are facing a very difficult situation in life where no friend or other person, this is basic surrender. Some basic surrender that we all do is that when faced with an impossible situation, we let go of holding that stress by saying, Bhagavane kapadu, nine nodkobeku. Now, when we do that, what we do is we let go of that thought and we sink towards the self unknowingly. In Atma Vichara, what we are asked to do? The same problem, consciously let it go. When you are ready enough, when you are not so strongly grasping that thought, let it go and inquire for whom is this thought. So one is done, let's say that not so consciously, we believe in the supreme power and we let go of the problem. Here we consciously let go, but both take us towards the same source. So whether we surrender, see, when we are unable to let go, no, when the problem is so strongly grasped, best thing is to surrender. Immediate relief will be there. What is that relief? We are sinking towards the Atma. And when we are having the lightness of touch, you let go by yourself. For whom is this thought? So both should be practiced and both take us towards the same source. And the more self-inquiry you do, your language will be of total surrender. And what grace, what lovely support God has given that I could come safely from Bangalore to Tirunelveli. So many things have been averted and it was such a simple, beautiful journey. Atma Vicharam will help you surrender. Surrender will make Atma Vicharam easy. Both go hand in hand and the end point, the goal is merger in the self without any doubt. So, since we are all in the same boat, as Buddha says, Mahayana, see, it's all the same boat. The Ahankara, Mamakara problem is, so all of us have to do the same sadhana. That is where compassion comes. See, when we take that we are in a separate boat and the problem is mine and I have to do something strange, then that is called dukkha. Whereas when we all understand we are all in the same boat of Ahankara, Mamakara, and that has to be dropped in devotion or in Atma Vichara, then we look at each other only compassionately. See, it's all the same problem for all of us. We are not in different situations. So that way we come to satsang, just share the common approaches, devotion and Atma Vichara.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Dhanyavad, sir.
Welcome.
As we go on doing this self-inquiry, Nanda Kumarji, when we ask for whom is this thought, it is for me. So who am I? After some time, that verbal process becomes heavy. So automatically, non-verbally, it is attention starts switching to the self rather than going through the verbal process. So what do you say about that?
No, correct. See, actually, the Guru or the God or the Supreme is inside each one of us. Therefore, one has to simply start practicing Atma Vichara, and without doubt, the guidance will come from within. See, and what you are sharing is so nice that you're telling that at one point you don't need to remember these things. That the gentle lightness with which you hold will be natural, and the verbal content may not be required. So that's a beautiful point that you are telling that. But the thing is, as we make our simple efforts, I am sure as that light is teaching to everyone, it will reveal to every sadhaka without doubt. Bhagavan says, that a single thought, let go of, or even a trace, the smallest moment of time with the inquiry, who am I, will take you a long way towards the self, he says. So these revelations which you are saying, that will naturally come to anyone who just starts making the effort, is what I feel. What you were saying makes absolute sense.
Thank you. Light is all intelligent, so it will guide each sadhaka in the
It doesn't have partition. It
required.
doesn't have partiality.
As required, the guidance will come for each sadhaka, customized.
Sir, again, the question is, if I take the vehicle, the devotion vehicle, and at some point of time I have to drop that vehicle and get into the another vehicle, that I am the Brahman, so that vehicle is no more required. So my question is, dwelling and thinking on internal inquiry, at some point of time I need somebody's help. Like Karna, he is thinking that his mother is Radheya. But unless someone comes and tells your mother is not Radheya, but actually your mother is Kunti. So by getting into deep meditation, Karna will never realize that his real mother. Somebody come and tell him your mother is Kunti, not Radheya. So my question is, where is this self-inquiry really help me to get into the reality with the help of somebody? So,
Yeah. See, Bhagavan himself refers to this situation, that was Karna anything other than Kaunteya? So he was always Kaunteya, only
correct.
he did not know.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
the LKG teacher may come and say, see, you are not an unlearned boy, you now know alphabets. The first standard teacher may come and teach you something else, point you something else. But then, see, the consciousness within is one and the same, and that is one and the same from beginning, middle, and end. Therefore, that is the real teacher. Even the other teachers who have come, including Bhagavan on the outside, they are all there only because self is there as reality inside. Bhagavan himself says that I am not your guru. They will come automatically in our search. See, the frog probably expects that having a longer tongue is better for it. The polar bear meditates on a thicker skin for 10,000 years, 20,000 years, gets the genetic change required. But then we are human beings. All those gurus have been there. The climate has been a guru. The other people have been gurus. But they are all there because your inner nature is of Kaunteya. You are already Kaunteya. So that is the reality. See, the guru goes to the final point. Previously, we feel the person who introduced me to meditation, he's my real guru. See, I was in such a downtrodden way. I was telling lies and other things. And in 97, that guy came and put me onto a meditation class. It was completely transformative. So I feel that person is my guru. Then as we do inquiry, we find that, see, even if that person has put, if my inner light had not been mature enough to make some sense of it, I wouldn't have understood, isn't it? So the real guru, even there, has been the ability to grasp. So at some point in our inquiry, automatically, naturally, the truth will reveal that the guru is inside, not outside. So it is a natural thing. The transition is not that the ego has to make it, and how to make it, you need not worry. Just keep at it. Just keep your inquiry going between devotion and self-inquiry. Naturally, you will understand that the consciousness is the guru, none of the objects. That is a sensory world, three-dimensional world that can only point to a higher dimension. The higher dimension is within you. You have to realize it, isn't it? So therefore, the guru cannot be outside. On the outside, the suffering, see why it is said that Arjuna had to suffer for Krishna to open his mouth. If suffering is not there, see, Bhagavan comes down from the hill once, and a big insect is is fluttering on the well water. Bhagavan says to the attendant, see if it is playing in the water or is struggling for life. If it is struggling for life, lift it out. If it is playing, leave it. Now, the truth is like that. If you are playing with whatever field you are doing, it will allow you to play more and learn about that. But if you are suffering from that dimension, oh, this dimension is, then it will start revealing deeper truth. So you will clearly understand as a natural progression that the Guru is inside, because that is the truth. Satyameva jayate, no? So one of the Satyas is that the real Guru is inside, not outside.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
My privilege.